Hi, this is Jess Mahler, and this is my presentation for the Applied Research Project. For my project, I decided to focus on students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I chose this because I'm a learning support teacher and many of my students have ADHD, so I felt that this was a good topic to choose. The article that I used was called Educators' Experiences of Managing Students with ADHD, a Qualitative Study. And in this article, I'll go over to the left side of the Padlet here. So the two research questions that they were trying to answer were, how do educators respond to students with ADHD in the classroom? And what are the barriers to how educators respond to those students? So the reason why this is so important is because approximately 8% of children are diagnosed with ADHD. And that percentage comes from a study that was done in 2011. So now we can only imagine that it has gone up. So because of that prevalence, it's important for teachers to learn how to best support these students with ADHD, both face-to-face and in online learning. So next, moving over to the method, the participants were 42 educators from the UK. And for the research, they participated in an individual interview or a focus group. The researchers then took those results and transcribed them verbatim. Looking at the results, the main findings, they determined 6 common themes from the results: broad strategies, student-centered, inclusive strategies, labeling, medication, and relationships. The first 3 themes deal with the first question of how educators respond to students in the classroom, and the last 3 themes deal with the barriers to how educators respond to those students. So theme 1 was broad strategies. And in the study, it said that many teachers were using these strategies for the whole class and not particularly strategies for students with ADHD. So that was a common occurrence that they were finding many educators just kind of did it for the whole class. Theme number 2 is student-centered. So some of the teachers in the study used strategies that aligned with individual students' strengths and needs. And this was a positive for the study because students with ADHD, they need to use, or teachers need to be using those flexible strategies since those students are unique and they learn differently than the other students may learn. And theme number 3 is inclusive strategies. So although these students with ADHD do face additional struggles in the classroom, they can and should be still included in the regular education setting to the fullest extent. And in order to make that possible, instructors should modify their curriculum, differentiate assignments, and give those students proper supports in order to be successful in the classroom. So theme number 4 is labeling, and this was the first barrier that they reported in the study. So this is a barrier because once students get that ADHD label, some teachers kind of lump them all into the same category, but that's not good because each student is an individual and they may learn differently. So that is definitely a barrier. Another barrier to having that label is the shame that a student might feel if, they have this ADHD label. So teachers just need to make sure that all students feel included regardless of their disability and make sure they feel comfortable in the classroom. Theme number 5 is medication. So the results of the study had mixed reviews regarding medication. Some educators reported that there were positive impacts that allow more effective use of strategies in the classroom. But on the other hand, some practitioners raised issues with adverse effects from the medication. So that can be looked at as, either a barrier, or for some students, it might actually be helpful. And theme number 6 is relationships. So all students with ADHD, those without, they all benefit from that positive relationship with a teacher at school. So teachers should try their best to build that relationship so that students with ADHD understand that they can be successful, and that will help raise their self-esteem. So overall, the results showed that educators need to be learning about specific strategies that they can be using with their students for ADHD instead of just using those broad strategies for the rest of the students in class. More specifically, teachers should really learn how to best support those students with ADHD in the online classroom. So the study also had some suggestions for applications of their findings. So they did say that many of the strategies used for students with ADHD can be used for both face-to-face instruction and online instruction. One of the suggestions they gave was brain breaks. As stated in the text, it said a strategy that appeared to be more targeted at improving difficulties related to ADHD in particular was using physical activity. And of course, this is important for those students with ADHD because they have those core symptoms of hyperactivity, inattention, and impulsivity. So if you get them up and moving, that kind of gets that energy out so that they're better able to focus. Suggestion 2 from the study was to make content relevant to students and appeal to their interest. This is, of course, especially important with students with ADHD who have difficulty focusing. If they have something that they're engaged in or they're interested in, more likely they're going to be paying attention to instruction. And suggestion number 3 is continuing the need for future research. There should be research into additional interventions that help support those core symptoms of ADHD. And then there is also a need for future research into how these specific ADHD strategies will impact online learners. Some suggested tech tools for brain breaks are using GoNoodle or YouTube, and these have lots of videos for meditation, yoga, or just dance-alongs to get the students up and moving. And of course, this is good for students with ADHD because they have that hyperactivity, they have that impulsivity. So getting them up and moving will get that energy out and better help their focus. A tech tool for live instruction could be Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Some tools for pre-recorded instruction, YouTube, or really anything else that you can record a video on, and then you can then post the video to the class LMS, whatever that may be. For collaborative learning, they can use something like a Padlet, which is what I'm using. Students are able to make these little boxes and work on an assignment collaboratively. They can also use Zoom or Microsoft Teams for breakout rooms to work on an activity together collaboratively. And then the last one for tech tools that I have for speech to text, there's a program that I use with my learning support students. It's called Snap and Read. It is not currently a free program, but my district does pay for it. So basically it'll take anything and it will convert it to, reading it to the students and also having them verbalize the speech to text. It'll type for them. There is also a feature on Google Docs. It's called voice typing. If you go into Google Docs and hit tools at the top, voice typing is speech to text. So I have my learning support students use that as well, because sometimes when they're typing something, it's difficult for them to, keep looking down and back up, down and back up. Whereas if they use the speech to text, they can have their paper in front of them, hit the record button and read out loud, and it will type it for them. So I found that to be very useful for my students, especially in my classroom. So in conclusion, the connections to the course that I made, the use of think aloud lessons to guide students through tasks. I feel that this would be especially important for students with ADHD because sometimes they don't know where to start and they don't know the steps of how to complete a task. So using think aloud lessons guides the students through what they're supposed to do and also gives them a better idea of what it should look like in the end product when they're finished with that assignment. Another thing connecting to the course is providing lesson presentations in a variety of formats. This is helpful for students with ADHD because they can watch the live instruction and then they can go back and re-watch it as many times as they need to ensure the understanding. They can even pause the video in the middle. They can rewind and go back and re-watch it. So again, providing it as a live lesson and pre-recorded, it's good because then students can go back and reteach themselves if needed. Another connection that I made to the course is that materials and technology should be made available to students to assist with the learning process. So these are things like speech to text, templates, chunking of information, feedback, enforcement, peer tutoring, modeling, different options for task completion, multiple modes of communication. So these are all things that I'm used to doing as modifications in my learning support classroom, but this is especially important for students with ADHD because they do need those modifications in order to be successful, especially learning online. And how it connects to the framework: Domain 1, mindsets; Competency 1, new vision for teaching and learning; Standard C, create learning environments that are flexible and personalized, dependent on real-time data, direct observation, and interaction with and feedback from students. So based on that competency, teachers should be using flexible, personalized learning environments for students with ADHD. Again, provide those additional adaptations and modifications, and even individualized instruction as needed. Domain 2, qualities: Competency 1, grit; Standard B, maintain and model persistence, confidence, and optimism to resolve issues. So this I connected to the Think Aloud strategy. So if students see their teacher modeling and thinking through the task at hand, they're more likely to keep going and use their perseverance. And it's important for teachers to serve as those role models to help students through those difficult challenges. Domain 3, adaptive skills; Competency 3, communication; Standard B, establish and maintain open communication channels online and in person with students, educators, and other stakeholders to support student learning. So obviously it's important for educators to develop that relationship with students, whether it's face-to-face or virtually. Frequent communication should be used to support online learning, and teachers should make an extra effort to connect with their students in order to assist with all aspects of the online learning process. And as I mentioned before, students with ADHD, they may feel more reluctant to reach out for help, or they might not feel that they can ask questions. So it's very important that you build that relationship so they feel comfortable coming to you for help. And Domain 4, technical skills; Competency 2, instructional strategies; Standard B, provide resources for students to create evidence of their knowledge in a variety of formats to demonstrate mastery. So again, going back to those accommodations, provide different ways for students to be able to submit their work. So allow students to show their understanding in a variety of ways. And this is good for students with ADHD because they can express their learning in the way that they feel most confident. And to wrap it all up, in conclusion, many teachers from the study reported using broad strategies, student-centered and inclusive strategies, but there is a need to use more specific strategies to support those students with ADHD. The results from the study also highlighted some barriers, including labeling, medication, and relationships. So it's important to take those into account when working with students with ADHD. And the rest of my Padlet is just my references. And so here is my research presentation.